This is my 2021 Skoda Kushaq 1 litre TSI automatic style variant. I've owned this thing roughly for about 3 years. It's done 30,000 kilometers on the clock, and you can probably consider this as my long-term ownership review of this car. Before we dive into the video, let me give you a quick backstory of this particular car. So this is not really my car, this is like more of my family's car. My dad uses this daily and most of the kilometers have been put on by my dad. But I have also used it a lot. I think so out of the 30,000 kilometers that it's done, probably around 7 to 8 to maybe 10,000 also might have been put on by me. But this has been a really reliable, really easy, don't really stress about it much kind of car for us. It's been pretty reliable, not many major problems, but I'll come to that in just a moment. This is a 2021 Skoda Kushaq. We bought it in 2022 April or so. So I think so it's nearing about 3 years of ownership now, or 4 years since it's been manufactured. One of the final cars in the first lot of Kushaq, Tiguans and everything that had the big touchscreen inside. This is the top end variant. This is the 1 litre TSI style. So it is the 1 litre TSI with the top trim. So it gets all of the creature comforts inside except the digital cockpit that only the 1.5 TSI at the time got. So yeah, it's pretty much fully loaded in terms of when it came out. So yeah, let's dive into the video. So here are 5 things that I like about the Kushaq and 5 things that I don't really like about it. The first thing that I like about my Kushaq is the way it looks. Now I know a lot of people won't really like the orange color. Why we bought the orange color is because we had a crazy discount on it, so that's why we bought it. But I don't really mind it. I think it kind of goes okay on the car. I think so it's called honey orange or something of that sort. But yeah, I think so the Kushaq is a very good looking car. I love the front end of it. The rear end also is very nice looking. And talking about some of the design elements, you of course get the very recognizable Skoda grille up front. Then you have these lovely looking wheels also, which are 17 inches. This being a crossover, of course you have some body cladding all around it. But yeah, overall I think so it's a very handsome looking car, and in my opinion it looks better than the Tiguan for sure. So that was one of the reasons why we actually bought it over the Tiguan as well, because we liked the way it looks, and at the time Skoda was giving crazy discounts. So yeah, I think so it's a very good looking car for sure. The second reason as to why I like the Skoda Kushaq is because of the interior. The interior looks very, very nice. I love the layout of the interior, and it's a very easy to look at interior. There's not much going on. If you look at other cars, you have a massive console over here in the middle with a million buttons, but that is not the case. Of course, that comes at a price, which I will explain later on, but the design is super minimalistic. It looks very utilitarian as well. The steering wheel has been picked up straight out of a Superb, the LNK Superb, so it's a 2-spoke steering. There are a lot of cubby holes and a lot of storage compartments all over the car. Overall, I really like the design of the interior. The seats are very nice. You get ventilated seats as well. This is not the 1.5 TSI. 2022 or 2021 MY cars used to get the virtual cluster up front if you got the 1.5 TSI, but mine is not, so it doesn't get it. But I don't really mind it. The functionality is okay, and the screen also looks really cool. No buttons, just straight up touchscreen. So yeah, very practical interior and a very good looking one as well. The next thing that I like about the Kushaq is the sound system. Now, I'm not really an audio guy and I don't really care much about the speakers in a car, but the speakers in the Kushaq are really good. This being the top end model, you get the Skoda sound speakers, and compared to other cars I've owned, these speakers do really stand out. Especially if you're coming from a platform like the Vento or the Polo, you can really hear the difference between the speakers. But what I care about is how this thing drives, which brings me to the next thing that I like about my Kushaq. So another good thing about the Skoda Kushaq is that it drives very well. That is probably down to the reason that this car shares its chassis with a sedan. The MQB A0iN platform is shared amongst the Virtus, Slavia, Kushaq and Taygun. So maybe that is one of the reasons, because the engineers probably had to engineer the chassis and make the dynamics somewhat similar to the one that is found in the Virtus or Slavia. And that is a pretty big plus point, because this thing drives very, very well. It handles very nicely. The steering is pretty direct. It doesn't really have much of a feel, but I mean, it does give you the confidence. It's fairly stable on the highway. And yeah, overall, I mean, even if you're on a twisty road, I wouldn't say it is the most exhilarating car to drive, but I think you will have a little bit of a grin on your face. And the last point as to why I like the Kushaq is because of the headlights. Now, first of all, the headlights look super aggressive. You have this really aggressive looking DRL. And in my opinion, if you compare it to the Taygun, this front end looks just so much more aggressive. But apart from the aggressive styling on the front, these headlights actually serve a pretty decent purpose as well. In my opinion, the low beam, the high beam and the fog lights all together, they're very strong and they give you a lot of visibility at night. I don't think there has been a single instant where I have been disappointed in the visibility at night with the Kushaq. It's always super bright and it lights up the road very, very nicely. So a very big plus point over here as well. But not all is good, of course. Let's now talk about the 5 things that I dislike about my Kushaq. One of the main reasons I dislike about this car is the interior build quality. Now, if you've sat in a Vento, Rapid, Polo or any of those cars from that era, you would remember that the interior felt solid. It was very tough. It was built like a tank. Now, the interior quality and the build quality in general of those cars also kind of went south over the years. I think so 2019, 2020 onwards models of those cars as well were a little bit on the wonky side in terms of the interior, but still compared to this, those cars felt amazing. Like everything was just so well put together, but this car is not like that anymore. I think so they've done a lot of cost cutting. A lot of things have not been fitted in very nicely. A lot of stuff kind of moves around. And there are a lot of creaks and cracks and everything in the car when you're driving it. And overall, I just feel everything is just not at the level that VW Skoda used to be. We have done, I think so, 4 or 5 warranty claims on the car already. Nothing mechanical. I want to give that credit where credit is due. Mechanically, the car has been completely bulletproof, but this is my 3rd driver's door handle. My infotainment screen has been changed. My gear lever has been changed. And my handbrake button over here has been changed. Everything was done under warranty, which is completely fine. But I don't think those sort of problems should be arising, especially if you're asking 20 lakh rupees for a car of this sort. I mean, yeah, that is ridiculous. Now, I know I previously said that the driving dynamics of the Kushaq are very nice, but that does come at a cost. The suspension is on the stiffer side. So, this being like a family crossover SUV or whatever you want to call it, you expect it to be a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more supple. But I don't think that is the case. VWs and Skoda products are usually on the stiffer side, but when you're designing an SUV or if you're designing an SUV, you want it to be a little bit more on the softer side. But unfortunately, that is not the case with the Kushaq. It is very stiff compared to the other cars in the segment, and you can really feel it, especially when you're going through bad roads. If you're on a bumpy section on the highway, the suspension just isn't what it needs to be. That is just my opinion. But of course, if you're a driving freak or if you've bought the car for a little bit of driving pleasure, I think so it does that box very well. But if you're talking about outright comfort, I think the Kushaq is on the lower end of that if you compare it to its rivals. Another thing that is not very nice about the Kushaq's driving experience are the engine options that VW have given. The car that I have, like I said, has the 1 liter TSI engine, and yeah, I think so it's a little bit underpowered for this car. The reason why we bought it is because we got a cracking deal on it, so that's a completely different story for another day. But the 1 liter TSI feels a little lackluster in this car. I mean, you need to give it a little bit of a poke to actually do an overtake. And overall, I don't think this particular engine really suits the characteristic of this car. Coming to the 1.5 TSI that you can also get, again, that engine will be a little bit better, but overall, I mean, I'm not a fan of that engine as well. So I think so both engines don't really do this car justice. And I really think that if you're buying a crossover or something of that sort, a diesel engine is really what should have been given. But since VW did a whole crazy thing back in whatever 2016, 17, 18, wherever it happened, the Dieselgate incident that happened, yeah, I mean, diesels are very rare to come by now in VAG products, and they've completely stopped diesels in India altogether. So a little bit of a shame, but probably a 1.5 TDI or even a 2 liter TDI in this car would have been absolutely epic in my opinion. Coming to another problem about the driving experience are the gearbox options that you have. Now, of course, this being a crossover, I think so most crossover people would want to buy their crossover with an automatic gearbox. 6-speed manual I don't think really does justice to this sort of a car, and you would want the ease of driving in it. So I think so most people would go for an automatic gearbox, and the automatic gearbox options in the Kushaq Taigun are again a little bit of an injustice to this car. So if you get the 1 liter TSI engine and you opt for the automatic gearbox, you get a 6-speed torque converter gearbox, and I have to say the 6-speed torque converter, well, it's a little jerky, very slow to respond. I know you do get paddles, but like the paddles take like a good 1 or 2 seconds for them to realize that, you know, they've done something. So yeah, the 6-speed torque converter isn't the most, you know, driver friendly gearbox. It's a little jerky, it's a little slow to respond, and the creep function is like launch control basically. Yeah, if you're in standstill traffic and you just let off the brake, you're basically rear-ending the car in front of you. That's how sensitive the creep function is. Coming on to the 7-speed DSG that you get with the 1.5, it's the DQ200 gearbox, and I'm pretty sure everyone already knows the nuances of owning that gearbox. It's a very fragile gearbox, sometimes tends to overheat in bumper-to-bumper traffic. DSG failures, clutch plate failures, you know, a whole bunch of things can go wrong. Now, I know VW has improved the DQ200 gearbox over the years, and failure rates have reduced by a big margin, but still overall, you know, not the most reliable of gearboxes, pretty fragile, and most importantly, it is very expensive to get it fixed. So yeah, I think so that's a little bit of a thumbs down. Now, I know I gave the Kushaq a lot of credit for having a really nice and minimalistic design, but like I said, that came at a cost. And one of the final reasons as to why I dislike the car are because some of the controls over here in the central console. The AC buttons are all touch capacitive now, so you have to kind of divert your attention from the road, and yeah, this slider thing is kind of annoying, and you really don't know when you press the AC or not. So yeah, there's no feedback, there's no response from this unit over here, so that's pretty annoying. And this screen is minuscule, I mean, very difficult to look at. And the other thing that I really don't like is that if you're the passenger and if you want to change the volume, there's no knob anymore. It's on the screen. And if you're a first timer in this car, yeah, it takes a while for you to understand where that thing is. So these two things, yeah, I think it's a little bit unnecessary, but it is what it is. So those were some of the reasons as to why I like and dislike the Kushaq. So what is my verdict after almost 3 years of ownership and 30,000 kilometers later? I have to say, in isolation, this is a great product. I think so VW and Skoda have done a very good job in, you know, making this platform fun to drive, The interior looks really nice. The cars also look very nice. But I think so build quality is a big hit for these cars, especially if you're coming from the older generation of cars. My dad had been driving a VW Vento for I think so 8 years or so, and after we bought this car he was a little bit disappointed with the build quality on the inside and the poor engine choice that we made by buying the 1 litre TSI. And that especially hurts even more when you consider the ludicrous price tag of 20 lakh rupees when we bought it back then for the 1 litre TSI style automatic. So yeah, I think so the price and the type of car that you're getting doesn't really match. I think so at 15 lakh rupees, this 1 litre TSI automatic is a very good buy. And I think so at 18, 19 or 20 lakhs is also a stretch. The 1.5 TSI top end model is a good buy. But anything above that is I think so not worth it for both of those cars. But if you compare them to the rivals that they have, they're still better. So a bunch of things to keep in mind. So if this video does help you out in buying your next car or something, yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.